button. So for this week's video, I have one more Halloween inspired cake for you. Now, if you haven't seen the previous two, then make sure you head back and you check those out. But for this week's video, I'm going to show you how to make this trick or treat sweets inspired cake. Now, don't forget, if you enjoyed this video tutorial, you can subscribe to the Kate Spanish YouTube channel. You can also hit the notification bell next to the subscribe button, and this will just alert you every time a new video is uploaded. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so for the cake itself, I've just got a 6-inch round cake, which is stacked up with 4 layers, giving me a height of around 5 inches. Now, I'm just covering this in a purple fondant, and this is the Dusky Lavender from Renshaw. Placing my icing over the top, just smoothing this out with upward motions onto my cake. Now, I do have a video showing exactly how I cover my cakes in fondant, and I will put a link in the description below. Once that has all been smoothed down, I'm just going to go in with my paddle smoothers just to get that nice edge on the top, and finish it off with my flexi smoothers. Once you're perfectly happy with the cake, it's now ready to add our lettering on the front. Now, for the words, I just want to add trick or treat. Now, I've got a few sets of sweet stamps, and these are just by Amy Cakes, and I'm going to use these to give me a slightly different effect on the different words. So for trick, I'm going to be using the Irvin set. So I've got a small piece of fondant, and I'm just going to use this to pull my letters out. Now, for the word trick, I'm going to be using all capital letters. For the word treat, I want this to be slightly more fancy. So I'm going to be using the Elegant set. Now, I'm going to use the capital T, but then go in with the slightly smaller letters. So I've got uppercase and the lowercase. Now, for the or that is going to go in the center, I just want it to look slightly different to the other two. So I've just got the classic set, and I'm going to take out the lowercase o and the lowercase r. Once you're completely happy with how that's looking, take my clear pickup pad and just take that plastic off of the back. I can then lay this over the top and just push down so that it picks up all those letters, and we've created a stamp to use on the front of our cake. I'm going to line this up. Now I'm going to push this up against my cake and just push this from one side to the other, just embossing all those letters. Now, if you've got some that haven't pushed in as deep as you need, I'm just going to take them off my pickup pad and just push those in. When adding the letters, you want to make sure that you're adding them quite soon after covering your cake in your fondant, just so it's still nice and soft and you can push those letters in. Now I'm going to take some black food gel and just mix this with a small amount of alcohol just to create a paint so that I can paint inside my letters. I'm just going in with the smaller brush from the SweetStamp Brush Duo. There we have the trick or treat on the front of the cake. So now the cake is starting to take shape, I want to work on the board that it's going to sit on. Now, because this is quite a candy inspired cake, I'm going to cover the board in some sprinkles. So I've just got the Pixel Pearls in a Twisted Sister and an Emerald, also by SweetStamp. And I'm going to take a 9-inch drum board. Now, this one just measures 1 centimeter in height. Let's start by covering this in some black fondant. The reason for this is if there's any gaps between my sprinkles, we're not going to notice them as much. So I'm just going to roll this out until it's large enough to cover my board, pop some water on my board to make it stick, smooth it down, and cut off any excess around the edge. I'm just going to take a 6-inch cake board, and I'm just using this as a guide. So I want to place that just where my cake is going to stick, and just go around the edge with my Dresden tool. Now the reason for this is just because I only want this outside edge to be covered in my sprinkles, just so they're not sitting underneath my cake. Taking some edible glue, brush this going around that front edge, and I'm just going to pop some of those Twisted Sister sprinkles in with some of the emerald ones. Now I don't want these to go everywhere, so I've just got a cookie tray, and using this, start to sprinkle the little balls all the way over the board. Now I will be adding some of these sprinkles onto the cake, but this is just a really fun way to decorate the board. First off, any excess and just fill in any of those gaps. So here we have the start of our cake board. I'm just going to finish this off with a black ribbon just around the edge. Okay, so before I start putting my cake together with my board, I want to create the decorations that are going to go on top, and these are going to be giant pieces of candy. So I've just got some orange, some yellow and some white fondant, and I'm going to start with some giant candy corn. Now for this, I'm just going to take a small piece of my yellow and just roll this out into a fat sausage shape. Do exactly the same with the orange. Now I'm going to make this one slightly fatter just so the orange will be slightly bigger, and do the same with the white. Now I'm going to push all three of these together and use my rolling pin, go in and flatten these down until they're around 1 centimeter in height. Now I just want to make sure that all those colours have combined together. I can then trim along the bottom and cut out a large triangle shape. Now my triangle is going to be around 2 inches in height. Trim off the top and those pointy corners on the bottom. Go all the way around, just curving those up. So there we have our first piece of giant candy corn. Now I'm going to go ahead and make a few more of these. A few of these, I'm just going to take a cocktail stick and just push this into the bottom, and that's just going to allow me to add them into my cake slightly easier. With the rest, I can then just lean them up against some of my other giant candies. Pop these to one side just to dry so that they're ready to add onto the cake. Okay, so I'm now going to create some giant candy sweets that look like they're wrapped up in some wrappers. So I've just got 2 different shades of a darker purple here. So I've got a larger amount which I've just mixed with a small piece of gum paste just to firm it up slightly, and a slightly lighter purple. Now I'm going to take a ball of the darker purple, and this one is just over 1 inch in diameter, and I'm going to flatten that down slightly. You then want a smaller amount of the lighter colour, and I want to roll this out until it's a really thin sausage shape. Now you can go in with your plastic paddle just over the top of that, rolling it out, and this will just give you a nice smooth shape and create a spiral pattern on the top of my ball, just pushing it down slightly as I go. I then want to push it into my sweet just so it's nice and flat with the rest of the ball. Now you can either leave these round or you can just push it on one side just to make them slightly oval. I then want to create the 2 ends of my sweet just so it looks like it's been wrapped up. So just taking some of that darker purple, I'm going to roll this out until it's around 1 millimeter in thickness. Now I'm going to cut out 2 rectangles which are 1.5 inches by 1 inch, and similar to if you were creating a bow, I'm just going to pick those up and just pull together one of those sides. Trim these off so you've got a nice flat edge. So I'm going to use my ball tool and I'm just going to create a slight dent in the end of my sweet. Pop on a small amount of edible glue and just push that. Now to secure it in place, you might just want to take your cone modeling tool and I'm just going to push in to connect the 2 together and do the same on this side. Now you can use a spare piece of fondant and just tuck that underneath until it's dried, just to keep that in the air. So there you have your sweet. Now I'm going to do a few of these in a few different colours. and the last thing to do is just create some candy lollies to go at the back. So for these, I've just got 3 different colours of fondant, a light green, a dark green and a black. Now I'm going to start by rolling out some sausage lengths of these. Now I'm going to start rolling them out, and just as I did with the smaller piece for the candy, I'm just going to use my plastic paddle and just go over the top. Now with the black, I am going to make this one slightly thinner. Once we have our 3 lengths, I'm going to start by winding them around each other. So I'm going to start with the 2 greens. With the black, I'm just going to go in between and just also wrap that around. And this one is just sitting up against darker green. Bring back in my smoothing paddle. Now I'm going to go down the whole length, just rocking this backwards and forwards, just to combine all those colours together until we get one smooth sausage. I can then start winding this around itself, and once you're happy with the size, cut it off at an angle. Using your paddle again, I'm just going to go in over the top, just smoothing all those together. I've then got a lolly stick, or a stick that you'd use for cake pops. Push that in at the bottom, give us a nice lolly. Lollies can be made in any colour, and I just have an example of an orange and a black one here, so I've just used 2 different colours just to give me a slightly different effect. And I'm going to pop these to one side just for them to dry. So whilst my candy is drying, I'm just going to bring back in my cake board and pop a small amount of buttercream just into that centre. I can then use my spatula and just lift over my cake. Now once I'm happy with the position of my cake with those Halloween sprinkles around the edge, I'm just adding a thin satin ribbon around the bottom. And I've got a really small satin bow that I'm just going to add one side. I want to add a black drip just to one side of the cake. Now for this, I'm just going to use some black candy melts. Now these are just deco melts by Fun Cakes, and if you do find that they're quite thick, you can add a small amount of vegetable oil or coconut oil, but I find that these ones do melt down nice and smooth and are perfect for a drip. So I've just popped some of the deco melts into this glass, and I'm going to pop this into the fridge for intervals of around 10 seconds until the whole thing has melted down. I can then pop these into a piping bag ready to add my drip. Now the first thing I would suggest to do is testing it on the side of a glass. Now the reason for this is you can test whether your drips are too runny or maybe too thick or just right before you test it on your cake. Now if you'd like, you can go all the way around the cake, but I don't want to take too much away from all the things going on, and I don't want any of the drip to go over my lettering. So I'm just going to do a small amount of drip just on this one edge. Just making sure that I join all the drips together just along this top edge. Before that completely dries, I've just got some of those leftover sprinkles that we used on the board. I'm just going to use a paintbrush with a small amount of edible glue on there just to pick some of those up and just push those into some of that drip. And it's now time to add our sweets. So I'm going to start with candy corn just on the front and maybe a little sweet. So just working out where we want them. I can then use some edible glue and just stick these into place. So here we have the finished trick-or-treat Halloween inspired cake with the sweets or the candy on top. I really hope you've enjoyed this video tutorial and will enjoy making your own version of this cake. If you have enjoyed the video, then don't forget to give it a like, and don't forget that you can subscribe to the Cake Spanish YouTube channel for more videos like this. I'll also put a link in the description below to all the tools that I used throughout today's video. So until next time, bye!